The impact of flesh against flesh cracked through Lenox Avenue like an executioner's gavel. It was September 14th, 1931, 2:47 in the afternoon. The heavy hand of Officer Patrick O'Reilly didn't just strike. It claimed ownership over the face of Margaret Johnson, a matron of 58 winters, fresh from the sanctuary of the Abyssinian Baptist Church. The noise sliced through the heavy afternoon heat, crisp, brutal, and strictly business. The street froze in an instant. Peddlers went silent. The jazz horns lost their breath. Kids turned to statues. Gossip died in the throat. 200 witnesses locked eyes on a badge dishonoring a mother. Right in the heart of Harlem, a lady in her Sunday best, a woman clutching the good book like a shield, a woman guilty of nothing but breathing on a stretch of concrete that Officer O'Reilly deemed his personal territory, and the crowd watched her flesh and blood, Bumpy Johnson, stand stone still. No swinging fists, no screaming threats, not a muscle twitched. He held his ground, 6 feet of distance between him and the sin, watching her stumble back from the force, watching her trembling hand cover her cheek, watching the moisture gather in her gaze. It wasn't the sting of pain. It was the burn of shame, the crushing realization that her son could not step in, all because the aggressor hid behind a shield of brass. Bumpy's face was a mask of stone, but those eyes? Witnesses would later swear they saw the abyss itself, cold, vacant, a deep, dark well waiting to swallow a man whole. O'Reilly let out a roar of laughter that bounced off the brickwork. He spun his baton with practiced ease. He tipped his cap, locking eyes with Bumpy, challenging the hierarchy. "You got a problem with that, boy? Gonna call the law?" He chuckled darkly. But then he remembered. "I am the law." He turned his back, slow, arrogant, like a landlord walking his estate. Officer Patrick O'Reilly had exactly 72 hours before his contract with life expired. He was a walking corpse and didn't even know it. To comprehend the blood that was about to spill, you have to understand the weight O'Reilly carried in 1931 Harlem. O'Reilly wasn't just a beat cop. He was the clenched fist of the 28th precinct, the silencer. The man dispatched when the job required broken bones, not handcuffs. 11 years on the force. In that decade, he built a name that made hardened men vanish down alleyways, just at the sight of him. O'Reilly collected the street tax from every black-owned joint. Protection dues. You paid the fee, or your livelihood turned to ash. He squeezed the numbers runners dry, taking 50% of the cut and throwing them in a cell if they dared to whisper a complaint. He had hospitalized a dozen men, put them in critical condition at Harlem Hospital, and not a single badge was stripped. Why? Because O'Reilly was connected. The captain of the 28th was blood kin to his wife. The local alderman sat at his poker table every Thursday night, and the Irish machine, the true power behind the New York Police Department in 1931, held him close. O'Reilly was a necessary evil. He kept the streets terrified. He kept the underworld in line. He was the iron boot on the neck of Harlem. And O'Reilly knew his worth. He strutted through the neighborhood like royalty, nightstick loose, badge polished, certain that he was untouchable, not by the people, not by the statutes, by no one. But that Tuesday afternoon, O'Reilly was carrying a heavy grudge. He dropped a bundle on a rigged fight the night prior. His superior had dressed him down for reporting to duty smelling of whiskey. And now, an old woman was moving too slow for his liking, obstructing his patrol route. "Move," O'Reilly had commanded. Margaret Johnson had seen 58 years. Born in Charleston, South Carolina, 1873. Just 8 years after the chains were broken. She had witnessed horrors that would shatter a weaker soul, survived the segregation laws, survived the hunger, raised Bumpy against odds that were stacked to the sky. And she had learned the survival code of America, learned to lower her gaze when the white authority passed by. So when Officer O'Reilly gave the order, she replied, "Yes, sir," and attempted to clear the path. But her speed didn't match O'Reilly's rage. That was the moment the hand was raised. That was the moment the slap rang out on Lenox Avenue. That was the moment the death warrant was signed. September 1931. Bumpy Johnson was 24. He had already paid his dues in the joint twice. One stretch for robbery, one for assault. He was already a man you didn't look in the eye unless you wanted trouble. He ran the numbers. He kept the white wolves from eating off our plates in this neighborhood. He was a king in the making in Harlem. But standing on Lenox Avenue, watching a badge put hands on his mother, Bumpy wasn't a boss. He was just flesh and blood, frozen, held back by the cold, hard math of the street. The rule that choked every dark-skinned man in this city: raise a hand against the law, and you die. O'Reilly held the steel. He held the shield. He had the whole damn department watching his back. One swing from Bumpy, and O'Reilly puts him in the dirt. Calls it self-defense. Resisting arrest. The papers wouldn't even blink. So Bumpy took it. His knuckles turned to white stone. His jaw clamped shut like a vice, air hissing through his teeth. He stood while his mother nursed her cheek. Stood there while that pig laughed. 200 pairs of eyes watching him fail to protect the woman who gave him life. The street went dead silent. Then O'Reilly opened his mouth. That's what I thought. You people are all the same. You act big stealing crumbs from each other. But put a real man in front of you? He tapped the brass on his chest. And you remember who owns you. He spat right at Margaret's shoes. Tell your boy to learn his place, Mammy. Next time, I won't use an open hand. He walked off, whistling a tune. Bumpy didn't twitch a muscle for a solid minute after the cop turned his back. The block was quiet as a grave. There are no words for a shame like that. The disrespect cut deep into the bone. Finally, Bumpy stepped to his mother. He took her arm, gentle as a breeze. Let's go home, Ma. Margaret looked into her son's eyes. She saw the darkness there, and she went cold. She knew what was brewing. She knew that look, like when he was 14 and that shopkeeper cheated him on the bill, like at 19 when the screw beat him, like at 22 when a rival crossed the line. That look meant a debt was due. Ellsworth, she whispered, calling him by his true name. Don't be stupid. That man owns the daylight. Bumpy said nothing, just walked her home. But everyone on Lenox Avenue knew the score. Bumpy's silence was louder than a gunshot. The next 72 hours became pure Harlem legend. He didn't move fast. He didn't let the fire burn his brain. Instead, he did business. He thought, he calculated, he organized his pieces. At 11:59, he reached out, not to the hitters, to the working stiffs, the porters, the waiters, the shine boys, the ghosts in the room. The ones men like O'Reilly never saw coming because they never looked down. 6 hours. Bumpy had the blueprint. He knew where O'Reilly slept on the west side. He knew where he drank his ale. He knew his shift started at 6 sharp. He knew he clocked out at 2. He knew where he wandered after work. Always alone. 20 minutes. That was the window. Bumpy mapped the power lines. Who held O'Reilly's leash? The captain. The politician. The Irish mob downtown. This wasn't about getting even anymore. This was about setting a precedent. A message that would rattle every precinct house in New York. Meanwhile, O'Reilly was crowing, bragging to the boys in blue, laughing about the coward son who stood still, showing off the backhand, cutting the air like a big man. His friends laughed along. But O'Reilly missed the detail. The black janitor with the mop, listening, recording, reporting back to the boss. Let's get back to business. Between hour 24 and 48, O'Reilly started feeling the heat. A guy at the bar, burying his face in a paper, glass untouched. A sedan tailing him for 3 blocks before peeling off into the night. The same mug showing up twice across town. O'Reilly wasn't a fool. He knew how the game was played. He tipped off the boys in blue, but they laughed in his face. You're seeing ghosts, Pat. Nobody has the stones to clip a cop. Then came the 48 to 72 hour mark. The captain called him in. Patrick, word on the street is bad. I hear you got rough with a colored lady uptown, and that her boy is Bumpy Johnson. O'Reilly didn't blink. So what? I smacked her. She was in my way. What's Johnson gonna do? Weep about it? The captain looked like he'd seen a ghost. Patrick, listen good. Take a vacation. Head to your brothers in Boston. Lie low. O'Reilly just chuckled. Pure arrogance. I ain't running from some Harlem gangster. Let him try. I'll put him in the ground and sleep like a baby. That was Wednesday evening, September 16th, 1931. The clock ticked to Thursday morning. Officer Patrick O'Reilly stepped out at 5 a.m., heading for the subway station, on his way to the precinct for the 6 a.m. shift. The streets were dead quiet, pitch black, just a few yellow streetlights trying to cut the gloom. But O'Reilly never made the train. What went down in those 4 blocks? That's a story the shadows keep. No witnesses, no struggle, no shots fired, no screams. 1 second, Officer O'Reilly was walking West 85th Street like he owned it. The next, he was a ghost. His wife rang the alarm at noon. When he didn't show, the NYPD turned the city upside down. They tossed hospitals, they tossed morgues, they kicked down the door of every rat hole in Manhattan. Nothing. 72 hours of silence. Officer Patrick O'Reilly had simply ceased to exist. Friday morning, September 20th, 1931, 6:47 a.m. On the dot, exactly 72 hours after the vanish, Officer Thomas Murphy rolls up to the 28th precinct for the morning grind. He hits the front steps and freezes cold, a man lashed to the iron railing, naked as the day he was born, save for his skivvies, shaking like a leaf, not from the cold, from pure, unadulterated terror. Murphy walked up, and his gut twisted. It was O'Reilly, but the man inside was gone. The eyes were hollow, glassy, staring into the abyss, lips moving, but silent as the grave. His body was a map of bruises, not the kind that kill you, the kind that make you pray for death. And pinned to his chest, right over the heart, a message. Neat handwriting. Respect mothers. Murphy tried to cut him down. Pat, talk to me. Who did this? O'Reilly turned his head slow, like a rusty machine. His mouth opened. I'm sorry. That was it. Just 2 words on a loop. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They cut him loose, wrapped him in a blanket, tried to get a name. Patrick, give us a name. Where were you? What happened? O'Reilly just stared at the wall, lips quivering. I'm sorry. They hauled him to Bellevue Hospital. The docs looked him over. Physically, he was mostly fine, bruised, thirsty, tied up for a long stretch, but no broken bones, no permanent marks, nothing to explain the look in his eyes. Inside his head, Officer O'Reilly was rubble. The shrink worked on him for 2 hours, tried to dig out the truth of those 72 hours in hell. O'Reilly had one answer for everything. I'm sorry. What's your name? Son. I'm sorry. Where were you? I'm sorry. Who broke you? I'm sorry. That was it. Didn't matter how hard they pressed or what questions they threw at him. The man's mind wasn't just cracked, it was pulverized. Whatever hell he endured for those 72 hours wiped the slate clean, leaving only 2 words behind. The head shrinkers wrote it up in their fancy reports. Patient exhibits severe psychological trauma. Said it came from prolonged exposure to nightmare-level stress. The guy was a brick wall to every question asked. Recommended he be locked up in the loony bin and stripped of his badge immediately. In plain English, Officer O'Reilly had completely lost his marbles. The NYPD went scorched earth. They kicked down the doors of every joint in Harlem, dragged in every known wise guy for a chat. They dangled immunity, threw cash on the table, promised the moon for a single lead on O'Reilly. But they got nothing, not a peep. Nobody knew a thing. And the few who actually did, They stared those detectives dead in the eye and said, "I got no idea what you're talking about." The lab boys went over O'Reilly with a fine-tooth comb. Came up empty. The marks on him screamed restraints, maybe ropes, maybe chains, but nobody could say for sure. No prints, no loose threads, no DNA traces. This was 1931. After all, the science wasn't there yet to catch a ghost. They checked the note. Cheap paper, common pencil. The handwriting didn't match a soul in their files. Dead end. They grilled 200 people from Lenox Avenue, the folks who watched O'Reilly smack Margaret Johnson. Every single one sang the same tune. I don't recall seeing anything out of the ordinary, but the department knew exactly who pulled the strings. Everybody knew it was Bumpy Johnson. Problem was, they couldn't pin it on him. Bumpy had an ironclad alibi for the whole 72 hours, claimed he was visiting a sick aunt over in New Jersey, had a dozen people ready to swear on a Bible. His crew, all accounted for. Every associate was clean as a whistle. The investigation crawled along for 6 months, then a year. Finally, they buried it. Officially, unsolved assault and kidnapping. Unofficially, keep your mouth shut about this. Officer Patrick O'Reilly never walked a beat again. They medically retired him in December of 1931, gave him a pension, paid for his head doctors, but nothing worked. He spent the rest of his days rotting in and out of asylums. Wife walked out. Friends turned their backs. He became a hollow shell, technically breathing, but he wasn't living. For the next 37 years, right up until he croaked in 1968, Patrick O'Reilly only spoke 2 words, "I'm sorry," to the nurses, the doctors, the walls, and his own damn reflection. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." The boys back at the 28th precinct, they got the message. Loud and clear, what Bumpy Johnson did to O'Reilly, that was worse than putting a bullet in him. Death would have been a mercy killing. Instead, Bumpy engineered something so horrific, so twisted, that O'Reilly's mind just snapped like a dry twig. And the beauty of it? No evidence, no body, no crime scene, just a broken man left on a railing with a simple note. Respect mothers. The precinct was never the same. Cops still took their cut, still shook down the local joints, but they stopped raising their hands. The casual brutality ended right there, because O'Reilly's empty desk sat there like a tombstone. You can survive a slug to the chest, but you can't survive the hell Bumpy Johnson visits on your mind. In Harlem, this isn't a bedtime story for kids. It's a lesson in respect, a reminder that there are lines you simply do not cross. That mothers are untouchable, and a badge doesn't make you a god. It's how they remember Bumpy Johnson, the man who proved real power ain't about noise. It's about precision. It's about sending a message so cold that it echoes in the streets for generations. O'Reilly thought he could assault a woman in the light of day and walk away with a smirk. He was dead wrong. 72 hours later, they found him stripped and raving mad, apologizing to phantoms until his dying breath. And Bumpy Johnson? He went right back to business. He went back to business, back to the head of the table, because that is the burden of a king. They shield their own. They make sure disrespect has a price, and they ensure the lesson is etched in stone. Disrespect a mother, and you will spend the rest of your days on your knees. If you understand the code, do the right thing. Smash that subscribe button. We are telling the Bumpy Johnson stories the history books are afraid to touch, the smarts, the strategy, the rules. Leave a word below. What do you think went down in those 72 hours? And tell me, would you rather die or end up like O'Reilly? Hit the notification bell, because next week we bring you the tale of how Bumpy Johnson walked into Lucky Luciano's office with empty hands and walked out as an equal. You do not want to miss that sit-down. Listen to me. Harlem did not need heroes. They had Bumpy Johnson. And Bumpy Johnson's revenge was not a bullet. It was mercy. The kind of mercy that hurts far more than death.